The following is a recording done by military intelligence on August 23rd, 1968. The person being interviewed is a member of the U.S. Army named Donald Poulter. The interviewer is Michael Chris. Some of the tape has been damaged, and this entire reel-to-reel interview was recently uncovered due to search in an abandoned military base located in New Mexico. Attempts have been made to fill in the blanks and transcribe the interview to the best of the listener's ability. Some descriptions of noises and atmospheric interruptions have also been given. As for what's said in this interview, there's no way to know what this is about or if any of it is true. Why this tape would have been made and not true is unclear, but if any of this represents an actual experiment, the implications are terrifying.
Are you comfortable? Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Maybe. Do you know why you're here? I can fucking guess. Look, I don't know who told you I was involved in this thing, but they're fucking lying. I was following orders. Jesus, do you really think I'd let what happened there happen like that? What kind of fucking monster do you think I am? Mr. Poulter, I am not here to judge. I am not here to find blame. I just want to record your story. I need to know what happened. I need you to tell it. You were there at the start, right? Is that much correct? Yeah, I was there. I was there from the start. I was ordered to be there. I want that clear. It's clear. Now, just calm down and tell me the story. Tell me what happened. All of it. You sure you're ready for this shit? Mr. Poulter, please. Then buckle the fuck up, bucko.
I'm sure you've heard all about the Russian sleep experiment, right? I mean, it's something which has gone around and around for decades. Well, turns out it was true. I don't know how the Army got hold of the notes and data from the study, but they did. Just in case you've had your head in a hole and haven't heard of this thing, the legend is the Ruskies did this experiment during World War II. They were trying to make their soldiers stronger and without the need to sleep. Can you imagine? An army which never has to sleep, killing 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The story goes they developed some kind of gas which could allow a person to stay awake indefinitely. So, to test it, the commies got a bunch of prisoners together and put them in a bunker which could be sealed tight. They gave them food and put books down there to entertain them. They had beds despite the gas not letting them sleep. These guys were all going to get lighter sentences, and you fucking know this, being a prisoner in Russia is not fun. They jumped at the chance. They got the guys in there. The prisoners were cocky and sure this was all bullshit when they were let inside. Then the door was locked behind them and the gas pumped in. According to the Russians, things were okay at first. It took a few hours for the gas to get into the bloodstream. The prisoners were bored but making jokes and talking to each other. Then, after hours and hours, they found they couldn't sleep, and soon the screaming started. As the days and hours went on, the prisoners ran up and down the corridor within the sealed room screaming and ranting. They moaned and cried out to their mothers or whatever about how they were feeling. The scientists insisted they had to see this through. These were prisoners, and they had to find out what would happen. After about 3 days, the screaming stopped. Soon, prisoners began covering the windows by ripping out pages of those books, smearing them with their own feces and fluids, then putting them against the windows. While the scientists stood there picking their noses and wondering what to do, there was an eerie silence in the room. The parts of the report I read said the scientists eventually asked via microphone if everyone inside was okay. They got a reply saying they did not want the experiment to end. They were fine. They no longer needed food. The prisoners just wanted to be left alone. Now they were getting odd laughter and weird noises from inside the room. Strange chanting or singing in languages no one understood. Again, this was interesting, but not what the scientists hoped. So, once more, days go by while these assholes in lab coats stand around trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, they decide it's time to end this. Now, keep in mind, these prisoners have been in there not sleeping for more than a week. It had elevated their vital signs at first, but now they were below normal. They tell the prisoners they would shut off the gas, but the prisoners protest. They don't want to be released, they tell them. They're fine in there now and want to stay. The scientists decide, fuck this. They shut off the gas and pump it out. Then, they crack open the doors. The prisoners have started crying and screaming again, but now they're asking for someone to turn the gas back on. What the abbreviated report I got when I started told me was the prisoners were in bad shape. The original stolen full report was tucked away somewhere, so we got this summed up version. It just said they turned the gas off, the men inside were in bad shape, and none of them survived. Of course, I later found out it was much, much worse than all that, but we can put a pin in it for now and come back around. So, it was a bad thing, a failed experiment. So why the fuck were we gonna try this again? Well, our scientists said they thought they had figured things out. They said using prisoners was a bad idea because they were not physically fit to withstand the process. We'd use soldiers in perfect shape. We would also use the testing done to our guys to find those considered having the strongest minds who could withstand it. The Brainiacs also said they felt using gas was the wrong move. Our guys had studied the components of the chemical and figured out what was missing, but we would administer the drugs intravenously. This was a better way for the body to process the drugs. Plus, they had a host of drugs which they said would strengthen our guys, make them more physically fit, and more capable of handling the no-sleep drug. You see, the guy in charge of this whole thing was a guy named Krantz. I have no idea what his rank was or if he was even military. I just know he had already been working on drugs to make our guys stronger, tougher, more resilient. He felt there was just one more thing they needed. They needed to be able to go for an unlimited time. No sleep. I did not understand what really happened in the Russian experiment until later. I'll save all that. You need to have something to be anxious about. Anyway, we had 7 soldiers Krantz picked himself. Guys who were really gung-ho about being in Vietnam, let me tell ya. I have no idea why. I couldn't wait to get the fuck out of here, but these were blue-blooded Americans who really thought they were stopping communism or some shit. Me? Why was I picked? Well, I had a background in the medical field. I had trained to be a nurse with hopes of maybe becoming a doctor. I had also done pharmaceutical work. It was that work which made me intrigued about going into the medical field full-time. Anyway, I had high scores in chemistry and other shit, so Krantz thought I was a great fit for the fucking team. I'm guessing he had no clue about my attitude. Whatever, I was just glad to be away from the front lines. Front lines? What fucking front lines, am I right? So we got these 7 guys out to our base. Hell, even I wasn't sure where we were. When they brought me in, I had to wear a hood over my head. Krantz was really fucking paranoid about being discovered and convinced the Kong was around us all the time. I just know the ocean was close by, but I never got to see the beach. We were underground most of the time. I barely saw the sun for 6 months. These soldiers soon got the full dose of the strengthening medications. The reactions were rough at first. Not so much running around screaming, but lots of puking. More than a few of them shit their beds. They did not look stronger for about a week. Then suddenly, the symptoms passed and, man, these guys all came through with colors flying. Suddenly, these guys could lift something like 800 pounds. Each of them could run up to 30 miles an hour in short sprints. They could hike insane amounts of distance and just not get tired. Didn't get sick, they just kept going and going. We let them try out their new abilities for a while. Krantz started them on various mental exercises too. He wanted them to get smart. I found out later there was another drug administered which was supposed to help make them smarter, but it was part of the experiment I wasn't a part of for some reason. They got smarter too. Scary smart. Like, some of these guys could pretty much predict what you would do just before you did it. They also got very calm. Lots of times, these guys would just be in their dorm area and all of them with smiles on their faces. Sometimes you could go in there and one of them would laugh, then the rest of them would laugh, and you wondered if they were somehow talking to each other without saying a fucking word. I started to not enjoy going into the dorms. It felt as if we had pushed these guys. I felt it was too far, but Krantz was creaming his fucking jeans over there about how great it all was. He wanted to do the final drug, the one which would stop them from needing to sleep. Now, keep in mind what I just said. They were virtually tireless already. They barely slept now. Maybe a couple of hours was all any of them seemed to need to recharge. I argued this was good enough. The human mind, I said, needed the sleep to recharge in some capacity. We don't know for sure why people sleep, but we know our bodies get some benefit from it. The brain releases chemicals that only releases at night when you're asleep. Do you know that? It's true. But no, Krantz was not satisfied. He wanted a 24-hour soldier. He wanted superhuman soldiers who didn't need to sleep. These guys were tough now, too. Did I mention that? Yeah, we did tests where needles broke against the skin of some of these guys if you didn't hit it just the right way. I saw one guy take a knife to the gut and laugh it off. They weren't bulletproof, but it was goddamn close. I began to worry about how we would control these guys. Sure, they were nearly fanatical patriots, but so what? What if they got out there and their big brains saw this war was shit and decided to end it themselves by turning against us? Oh, Krantz was gone, man. He didn't want to hear about any of this. He didn't want to listen. This was his fucking dream, man, and he wasn't gonna listen to a shit like me. So, about 3 months in, we started to administer the no-sleep drug. Yeah, it had a name, but it was twice as long as your fucking arm. I just called it no sleep. We started them on intravenous doses of this drug. They just laid there in their beds, smiling and acting like they were all talking to each other without moving their fucking lips. Creepy. Well, things started to go south at first. They got sick again. This time there was moaning and some crying. For the first 2 days, all of them were bedridden. Then, on day 3, some of them began to get up and pace around the dorm, up and down and up and down. They had wide, anxious eyes, too. Crazy. We didn't get the torn book smeared with feces, thank God, but eventually, after another 2 days or so, with continued administration of the drugs, they started to calm down. Calm down too much, in Krantz's opinion. The soldiers took to their beds, looking calm and quiet. It was like a room full of Buddhas or something. I remember when they got quiet, and the rest of us stood outside the dorm room and looked in. We were just like those Russian guys must have been. Wary, scared. What had we created here? Krantz was beside himself. The men hadn't needed sleep for days, but they also weren't exercising or asking to be sent on missions. After 3 more days of just observing, we noticed the soldiers were eating less. They didn't seem to have much interest in the food we had for them, and we had good fucking food, too. I couldn't get enough of the stuff, but they ate like birds. We noticed their muscle density was increasing despite this. Finally, Krantz had had enough. He insisted we walk in there and start talking to the men. I went in with them. I had no clue what to expect. They watched us like fucking owls or something as we did. All of them laughed at one point at the same time, even though no one had said anything. I ended up sitting down next to a soldier named Corporal William Watts. Great name, right? Like a superhero name or something. So, how are you feeling? I asked him. I remember my mouth was so dry and I kept licking my lips. I'm fine, Watts replied. I've been fine. We've all been fine. We actually wanted to thank you all for doing this for us. We don't need to sleep or dream. We're inside a dream and living within one. So why do we need to close our eyes and dream? My first thought was the medications were making them high. Great. We'd invented a sleep-depriving LSD instead of a super serum. What do you mean? I asked. I hadn't jotted a note yet. I was strangely hypnotized by his eyes. They were open wide and very pale blue. I mean, Once your brain has advanced to the point where you don't need to lay down and waste time sleeping to process the world, your perception changes. Some part of you begins to understand the world around you may not be real. This all may be a dream. Even if it's not, then it's some kind of simulation. When you realize reality is not what you thought it was, you can't control it, but you also gain a kind of peace. The madness makes sense. Of course the world is crazy and people kill other people, because the simulation is full of glitches. These were not sane, comforting words, right? I still had no fucking clue what he meant. He seemed to get this, so he reached out his right hand toward the table beside his bed. There was a glass of water there. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in the blink of an eye, the water was in his hand. I didn't see it float or move. One moment it was there on the table, and the next it was in his fucking hand. I swear to God. I was pretty well freaking out, as you might imagine. I was sure there was some residual drug floating around in the air. Maybe someone had released a gas after all. I was sure I was going crazy. I told him I didn't understand what just happened. He just smiled. "Things are going to change," he replied, and I had no fucking clue what he was talking about. "Reality itself can change. Do you know? Do you understand? I guess I should thank you. You've opened up new realities and shown us other realities." "What about your mission?" I asked. "Are you and the men still ready to complete your mission?" "Yes, we'll still do the mission. But the mission may not be what you think it is." Again, I had no clue what any of this meant, but it scared the shit out of me. I didn't want to keep questioning him. "Do you and the others feel like getting up and going out on a mission?" I asked him. "We'll do what needs to be done," he replied. "But when we do, we'll do it our way. Send us wherever you want. None of it's real." I decided this was a good time to cut off the interview. It felt like I was going around and around in circles, and my head hurt a little. I had no idea what to tell Krantz. The guy was as nutty as our test subjects, but in an entirely different way. He was all gung-ho about winning the fucking war. Kill, kill, kill was his deal. He got all of us into a room and started asking what we'd found out from our test subjects. Well, what could we say? They were super-powered nutjobs. The other guys hemmed and hawed about it, though. They were all terrified of Krantz, wanted nothing to do with him. So they all said shit about being unsure of the results and needing more time to study or understand how the drugs were affecting them. Not me, brother. I looked that cranky old son of a bitch straight in the eye and told him his super soldiers were batshit crazy. As you might imagine, the son of a bitch did not take it well. Nope. He pulled a Patton, walked right up, and slapped me across the face. When I snapped back upright, he slapped me on the other side of my face. The second one made me taste blood in my mouth. "They're ready," Krantz hissed. I swear to God, his eyes looked red when he said it, too. "We need to send them on a mission. We have the most powerful soldiers in the world right here, and you want to tell me not to use them? You little shit. You will follow orders and you will fall in line." He slapped me one more time just for emphasis. I had a fucking bruise on the right side of my face for a week. No testing. Get it? He didn't want us to take them to the surface and test them in war games or anything. Not this guy. Nope. I thought for sure I would be reassigned, but he kept me on. I think he didn't want the rest of the world to find out about the experiment. I mean, would you? He kept us all close and had chosen us all personally. We were his team, and he would not let any of us slip away to cause problems. I am certain he had a bullet with my name carved on it. I mean, he had one for all of us, but I'm sure mine was at the front of the chamber, get me? Krantz said there was a village in some part of the fucking country the US wasn't even supposed to be running around in. I mean, you know about it now. I wouldn't be here if you didn't know where we ended up. That was all Krantz, man. He was as crazy as the soldiers he had created. I didn't protest. I could still taste the blood in my mouth when he outlined the mission for the scientists. He wanted us to make sure they were still pumped full of the drugs and ready to go. Then he went into the experiment room to brief the soldiers. We followed him inside when he did, and were stunned when we walked into the dorms. The soldiers had torn apart the books and torn paper off the walls. Somehow they had fashioned the most insane and terrifying masks you'd ever see. Things with horns and snarling faces. All of them streaked with red, and it didn't take a fucking genius to know the red was blood. They had also scarred themselves, drawn bizarre designs on their skin with their own fingernails and teeth. The wounds had healed, but do you realize how fucking deep they had to dig to create scars? We made them to heal super fast with the drugs. Somehow they had figured out how to reach down so deep, even their new healing abilities weren't enough to erase the fucking scars. Even Krantz was taken aback by the sight. You could see it in his crazy-ass eyes when he walked in. He blustered for a few minutes. I had never seen such a thing. I could tell he wanted to tell them this was not standard-issue military and lay into them, but some part of him knew he had created monsters. He was Victor fucking Frankenstein, and these were his creatures. He also knew if he pissed them off, they could tear him apart limb from limb without a second thought. I still cling to the image of him looking shocked, though. I remember the sight of him with his eyes wide and unable to speak. It keeps me warm at night. I think some part of him knew right then things were not going to end well. He filled his super soldiers in on the mission. The men sat there in their masks with their horrible scars and listened. I slowly backed out of the room. No one seemed to notice either. I was going to get some fucking intel, man. I needed to know more about this fucking Russian experiment. I decided that night I would sneak out and see what I could find. For the moment, I just stood in the hallway and tried to get the images of those masks and scars out of my head. Look, I'm no big anti-Ruski guy here. I mean, whatever, man. Capitalism and communism are just words. But even I wondered about the intelligence of using some Russian experiment as the basis of this thing. I felt like Krantz was hiding something. I mean, of course he was. The military always keeps shit from us, right? You guys are keeping shit from me right now, right? How the hell did you even find me? I ran as fucking far as I could from that fucking nightmare. Yet here I am. Here you are. Where is this audio recording going to end up? You're gonna kill me somewhere, bury me in the fucking jungle? I know that. I understand you can't just fucking let me go. Fuck you. So, I was pissed. The guy had slapped me around. He had turned these guys into fucked up monsters. If there was a fucking monster here, it was Krantz. I had to find out who he was and what the fuck was really going on around here. I got out of my room. Krantz was big on the military shit and wanted us in bed and lights out at a certain time. I got out of the dorm and walked past the place where the soldiers were. There they were, all awake, laying there, just staring and smiling. For a moment, I felt this weird thing in the back of my brain, like fingers. They scanned me. Somehow they were reading my mind. For just a second, I could feel them all in there. Keep going. Find the truth. Those were the words I felt in the middle of my head. They were urging me on. So, I did what they suggested. Fuck it, I was gonna do it anyway. I found Krantz's office and broke in. Didn't take much. The locks over here aren't shit. His office was all arranged perfectly, just like you'd expect. All the files put away. He'd arranged the desk like something out of a magazine. You know, what the perfect desk looks like or something? Like a catalog for desk blotters. You know how real people do shit like have photos of family back home or something? A goddamn bobble-headed thing nodding away on a desk? Even in the fucking army. But not this guy. So I broke into the filing cabinets and the desk. Again, all easy. I was a thief back home, you know? I mean, it's how I ended up here. Got caught because I got stupid. I have a dad who got me a great lawyer, and then I had a choice to go to prison or go into the army. Didn't think this would fucking happen. Breaking into the desk was easy. I walked my fingers through the files and papers. So much of it was just bullshit. Requisitions for supplies, pens and shit. Then I opened the final drawer at the bottom of the filing cabinet. Way in the back, there was an old, battered file. I pulled it out and opened it. There it was, The Russian experiment. Most of it, as you might imagine, was in Russian, but Kranz had a translation of all of it too, right next to the Russian versions. It didn't take me long to find out what Kranz hadn't told us. As you probably know, things got royally fucked up there in Russia. The test subjects didn't just die because they couldn't sleep. They tore each other apart, tore themselves apart. When the gas was going on and on, the prisoners covered up the windows. Did I tell you that? I think maybe I did. But when they finally shut off the gas and went down into the experiment room, they found over an inch of water on the floor. When they looked at the drain, they'd stuffed it with human flesh. Human goddamn flesh. One of them was dead for sure, but they had torn him apart, eaten him. The rest of them had ripped their own bodies open, strips of flesh torn from their legs, and one guy had internal organs exposed. They begged and pleaded for something to turn the gas back on. The prisoners made various statements about being something else, something more than human. They had seen the darkness of the universe and were part of it. There was blood and feces all over the walls. Several of them had sharpened their teeth to points, no idea how. The scientists were all terrified and shocked, of course. The prisoners tried to fight back, but they were weak, so the Russians had to drag them out of the bunker. When they got into the light, as the gas wore off, they died. Up until the very end, the prisoners begged to have the gas turned back on. The shock and withdrawal was what killed them. Then the government stepped in and burned down the bunker and killed most of the scientists. So, you see what happened? The American government, discovering this experiment from the Russians, pushed by Kranz and his ilk, found an experiment which created monsters. Real, horrible, terrifying monsters, and decided this was something they would do to our own soldiers. Sure, they thought, we're America and we have the smartest people out there, so we can fix the problems. Yeah, we'd slightly altered the results, but we still had monsters. Monsters Kranz wanted to turn loose on the world. I stood there holding that file in my hand and unable to believe what I was reading. Didn't even hear Kranz come in until we started talking. This is when I dropped the file and the papers all over the floor. "Like what you read?" he asked in that gravel voice. "Now you little shit, you've seen the full story. What do you think?" I didn't even try to pick up the papers. Just turned around, the look of shock on my face. I could feel it there. "What have you done?" I asked him. "What the fuck have you done?" "You and your type don't seem to understand the stakes here," Kranz said, stepping into the room and sitting down behind the desk. "This isn't a game. This is war. The stakes are the continuation of the American way of life. If you think the Russians haven't tried this experiment again, you're fooling yourself. They have the people and the technology. We are in an arms race and a real-life war. Biological, chemical, nuclear, all the weapons are on the table. If you think this is the scariest thing out there, you're deluding yourself, young man. This is nothing. However, if the Russians are willing to give themselves and their commie friends armies of super soldiers, we have to have them too. Except ours have to be better. They have to be stronger, more powerful, and they must think of only one thing: protect the United States of America. Destroy communism in the process, true, but protect the USA. I was stunned. I don't know why, but I was. I guess reality sometimes just finds new depths in which to sink. "These are our own people," I said. "Real soldiers, real lives. You have no idea what they're capable of. You want to turn them loose in the real world, and you have no idea how many people, innocent people, are going to pay the price." Kranz laughed. He had a horrible laugh, too. "No one's innocent here. Do you think the U.S. really wants to be here in Vietnam? This is just the first battle in a much longer war. This is where we stop communism and test the weapons we'll use to finally bring down the Soviet Union. This pissant little country is a testing ground, son. We're gonna burn it to the goddamn ground if we have to. There are no innocent little children running around here. They're all commies. If the price of freedom is a few thousand, even million slant-eyed lives, then so be it. Don't you believe in the supremacy of the United States?" I was getting angry now. Most of the time, I was just terrified of the man, but this was pissing me off. Who decides what's superior and what's supreme? I shot back. You? You're as nuts as those soldiers in the other fucking room. I seem to recall we all fought a global war to stop a madman who said his country, his people, and his beliefs were supreme. Remember that guy? Lots of yelling, tiny mustache. Crunt snorted at me as he reached into his desk drawer, took out a cigar, made an elaborate ritual out of cutting off the tip, then lighting it. When the room was suitably filled with the shittiest smelling cigar I've ever had the displeasure to be around, he spoke again. "Don't give me that shit," he said. "You know we had to stop Hitler to become top dog on the block. Sure, you can talk all you want about saving the people in the concentration camps and that shit. Looks great in the propaganda mills, but we conveniently forget the US rounded up Japanese citizens and put them in camps too. Maybe we didn't lead them into the gas chambers, but if you don't think it wasn't discussed before the solution we implemented was put into place, you're naive. Stopping Germany was about what war is always about, son. Economics. Companies make money hand over fist when there's a global conflict. Thins out the population nicely. Got us out of the Depression, too." The look on my face must have amused him. I had always wondered about the real reasons for wars. I mean, I knew Hitler was evil and had to be stopped, but to hear this sort of talk from a man right in the heart of the whole military machine was stunning. "Don't look so shocked, boy," Krantz continued. "Some part of you knew this. I can see it all over your face. That's the problem with the young punks like you. You strut around acting like you know it all and are the first generation to figure out how corrupt the government is. You pretend the US is corrupt like this is something new. You still believe somehow everything that happened before you were born was some noble thing, but only now is the United States a self-promoting, money-grabbing thing. From the very first, this country was about getting control of the money. Our forefathers wanted to keep more of their own cash instead of turning it over to a king. Get your head out of your ass." I felt sick. The clouds of cigar smoke were not making me feel any better. Krantz got up with the cigar clamped between his teeth. It was obscenely fat, that cigar. His teeth were yellow, but he had all of them, a full set. It was like looking at a cigar-chomping shark coming right for me. "Now you know," Krantz hissed. "You know, so now you have to help me see this through. I was going to let you and the rest of the eggheads stay here while I took these guys out on a mission. Now you get to come with. Time to man up, son." Then he hit me. Yeah, he hit me. Hard enough to knock me out. I mean, I always had a glass jaw, but this just caught me totally by surprise. And then it was dark. The next thing I'm aware of, I'm being shaken awake and put into full military gear. Helmet and everything. I hadn't had to wear one of those since I got to this shithole. Guys I hadn't even seen before are shoving a gun into my hand and jamming this thing onto my head. I'm barely able to stand, and they're forcing me to my feet, then dragging me towards a bunch of those Huey helicopters. I'm trying to speak. I'm trying to tell them this is wrong. All of this is wrong. Then I notice the soldiers we've been experimenting on. All of them are marching calmly and quietly toward the helicopters, wearing their terrifying masks. I notice a few of them have scarred themselves even more. They're barely wearing any gear. They have guns, but are holding them in their hands like they barely notice they have them. One of them, wearing this elaborate mask with horns and painted-on red eyes above the actual eye holes, nods to me. I realize this is the guy I was talking to yesterday. Was it yesterday? I have no idea what day it is. Then I see Krantz. He's dressed to the nines with his helmet and sidearm. He's got another of those fucking cigars in his teeth. He looks intense, of course, but there's something behind his eyes. Something weird and alive and vibrant. I can see it from where I'm being dragged. Something about seeing this man makes me get my strength back. Some kind of determination fills me, and I finally stand on my own. I push the guys who were dragging me away and start walking on my own. I realize I have an M16 slung over my shoulder, and there's a crazy moment when I want to unsling that motherfucker and shoot Krantz dead. Just as I think it, he looks at me, dead in the eyes. "Ready to be a man?" he asks me. "Just wait," is all I can think of to reply. We both get on the same helicopter. Several other soldiers, these without masks, and I wonder if there are more medical people. I don't recognize them, and when I look back at the building where I had just come from, I see several colleagues I recognize standing on the tarmac in their white lab coats. They all look shell-shocked. I think it stunned them to see the men in their masks, then stunned to see me going along with this whole thing.
Let's get this off the ground.
Krantz growls to the pilot after he checks to make sure his chemically induced army is in their chopper. The blades kick up another gear over our heads, and I grab a fabric strap to my right. I have never been in one of these things before. I am not looking forward to this. I just hope I don't get airsick in front of this asshole. I would not want to give him the satisfaction. I have no idea how far we flew. It felt like hours for me, but I'm sure it was much less. I looked out the window and the open side door, but there was no way for me to tell where we were going or what part of the country we were over. I mean, look at this fucking place. When you get up into the air, it's just all jungle and trees. I'm not fucking Tarzan. Eventually, the choppers descended. Let me tell you, it was harrowing as fuck, too. It felt like they were dropping way too fast, and the trees outside got close really quickly. That was the time I was most certain I would puke all over the helicopter. My stomach lurched up into my throat. I kept it all down, but it was close. Then we were down. It was a small clearing, and the trees were tall on all sides. I have no idea how those pilots got down into the space. It seemed too small, but there they were. The blades zipping through the air and somehow not hitting each other. The soldiers with the masks and those without jumped right out onto the ground. I suddenly didn't want to leave. Krantz spoke to the pilots. His cigar, now down to a soggy, wet snub, snarled at me when he was done.
Get out of my chopper,
he said.
Get out before I jab you with a bayonet.
I did my best to look pissed and angry at him. It didn't seem to faze him. I got out. The ground felt like it was vibrating beneath me, and I was unsteady at first. One goddamn helicopter ride, and I had lost my ability to walk on solid ground. The group had already formed into a tight formation. I have no fucking clue what they call those formations. Their guns were unslung and ready for use now. The super soldiers were in the lead, marching right into the jungle as if it weren't even there. Their handlers, or whatever they were, walking beside and behind them. I noticed the handlers' guns were actually aimed toward the super soldiers and not into the jungle. It was my first real sign Krantz and his people were afraid of what these guys could do. Krantz shoved me in the direction the others were marching, and I got into step with them. I held back. Krantz was right beside me, tossing the stub of his cigar into the jungle, then pulling a brand new stogie right out of a pocket somewhere. He went through his elaborate lighting ritual as he walked. Amazing coordination. Mad as a fucking hatter, but that asshole knew how to light a fucking cigar. We were soon in the jungle. I mean, deeper than I had ever been. The trees were like something out of a movie, and I could hear animals in the distance. The canopy of the trees swallowed the sun overhead. It was humid as fuck, but also much cooler down where we were. We walked forever. Even the guys guarding our new super soldiers were getting tired. I could tell they were getting overwhelmed. The only ones who didn't seem to feel anything were our experiments and Krantz. The man showed no signs of slowing, save for a slight sheen of sweat across his upper lip. I've never seen a guy so geared for war. Finally, we got to another clearing. There it was, a village, just like every fucking village you've ever seen in this country. There were rice paddies and then a bunch of thatch-roofed huts and houses. Peaceful. There were people in the rice paddies doing whatever the fuck it is you do in a rice paddy. There were men in their wide hats bent over. Women there, too. Up to their knees almost in water. Kids ran around the village itself, with older members of the village yelling after them in Vietnamese. Of course, the moment the soldiers in their masks and scars burst through the jungle, the people working in the rice paddies froze. It took a moment of staring between the soldiers and the villagers, as if neither were sure the other existed, before the women screamed. They all just ran. What are we doing here? I asked Krantz. Why are we at this village? Krantz snarled and wiped sweat from his forehead.
They're the enemy, son. All of them. We're here to destroy the enemy.
I looked at Krantz, his eyes bright and red and completely insane, then turned my head slowly to register the super soldiers and their own brand of madness. Madness I had helped create for them. Then I looked at the children, the women, the men running from these creatures right out of a nightmare. I had this moment frozen in time when I realized just how far into the realm of evil I had traveled. I wanted to blame Krantz. I wanted to blame the war. I wanted to blame anyone but myself, but I had allowed myself to get here. I pretended like I was above all of this, but I was there and had created these things. If I hadn't done what I did, this would not be happening.
Destroy!
Krantz bellowed.
No!
I called, but it was all drowned out by sounds I will never get out of my mind. The super soldiers ran through the rice paddies as if they were solid ground. The sounds they made were inhuman. Growling and snarling, mewling, and animal noises. They were firing their weapons in seconds. I watched them cut down men and women running away from them, but they didn't just use their weapons. One of them pointed at one of the huts, and it burst into flames. Another extended his left hand at a fleeing woman, and I watched her turn inside out. Have you ever seen something like that? One moment she was running, then I could see her insides. I could see the muscles of her body still trying to allow her to run. This was all just the start. They were so fast. God, you should have seen them run. We were still slogging our way around the rice paddies, and the men in masks were in the village. I could hear men, women, and children screaming. One of the huts burst into flames. There was gunfire for a moment, then it just stopped. What followed were sounds I hope I never hear again, but I'm afraid I'll hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. Inhuman sounds. It was sort of like growling, but deeper and more terrifying. High-pitched screams punctuated these sounds. We saw no villagers run back toward us, which meant none of them were getting past the soldiers to make their way out through us. If they were running the opposite way. Finally, we got through the water and rice. I ran between two huts and came into a kind of town square. All around me were bodies, but it took me a moment to realize they were bodies. At first, my brain thought maybe the town was butchering some animals, maybe for a feast or celebration or something. Then I realized one of the bloody lumps had the face of a child. I staggered against the hut, sick to my stomach. I didn't want to look up, didn't want to see what was in front of me. It took Krantz screaming to finally get me to raise my head. The scream wasn't him yelling orders like I was used to. This was different. This was a scream of fear mixed with anger. Krantz stood right there in the center of the square. At his feet were the bodies of a woman and two children. They had been torn apart. I couldn't make out which parts were legs or arms, but it was all jumbled together. I could see strips of flesh torn from the body parts. The soldiers were scattered across the square. They all held bodies in their hands, and they were feeding. It's the only way I can describe it. They were tearing apart the victims they held with their teeth. Their masks were tilted back on their heads, and all of them were covered in blood. Feasting on these bodies with a rigor I have only seen in movies about Vikings, where they all come back to their village for a big celebration and then tear apart turkeys and chicken or something. One soldier stood near the edge of the village. He had both hands up in the air, and apparently he was keeping anyone from leaving. Another one, while holding a small girl by the neck, held up his other arm toward a group of villagers standing near one of the huts. All of those villagers had wide, staring, terrified eyes, but none seemed able to move. The soldiers were making them all watch. They would tear their way through the village one person at a time and make them all watch what was coming. Despite all of his bluster, despite all of the tough talk about winning the war at all costs, it seemed seeing humans torn apart was too much even for Krantz. He stood there with his mouth open and his soggy cigar stub dangling from his lower lip obscenely.
Soldier, stop what you're doing right now. That's an order.
The super soldier stopped, but probably not in the way Krantz was hoping. I'm sure, in his antiquated way of thinking, he thought they would immediately snap to attention, maybe get in formation. That ain't what happened. The soldiers stopped whatever horrors they were inflicting on the villagers. All of them were covered in blood and bits of flesh. They turned to face Krantz. One of them, near the edge of the village, made a simple gesture with his hands, and the remaining villagers just, well, they sort of exploded. It covered me in pieces of them. The soldiers advanced on Krantz. The old man tried to move, but I could tell he couldn't. I figured now was a good time to run, but soon found I could not move either. I began to sweat, and I soon realized I was making weird mewling sounds. "You don't understand," the lead soldier said, his mask back down over his face to make the voice sound strangely resonant. "You are not in control. You never were. We're not even in control, but you have elevated us to a level where we can see what makes up this world. We see what this world has become because of men like you. Also, we can see what the world should be. You are food for the likes of us. Energy food, physical food, mental food. We thrive off of your fear. We devour your flesh and drink your blood. The entire world is now ours. You are nothing. A tiny man who has thought he was in charge when the world has been mocking him the entire time. So sad." Krantz shouted orders as if they would follow any of them. I kept trying to move, but I was no longer sure if I could not do so out of just fear from within myself or because something they were doing to me. When one soldier with his mask back over his face turned to face me, I was sure I would feel an instant of pain and then explode like the villagers. "You," said the soldier, "you will watch. You will warn the world of what we are, and that the rules have changed now. We are watching. We will purge this planet of the poison humans have left behind. Now watch what will happen to everyone on this rock floating in endless space." They descended on Krantz. None of them wanted to use the mental powers they seemed to have gained. They just ripped off their masks and dug their pointed teeth into his flesh. I've heard there are insects out there who lay eggs on other insects or spiders. The eggs hatch and burrow right into the spider, the larva slowly devouring the poor thing from the inside. The larvae keep the spider alive for as long as they can, eating unnecessary organs and saving critical ones for the last minute. These soldiers did the same thing to Krantz. The more he screamed, the more they seemed to enjoy tearing him apart. They tore into his flesh, down to the bone. They drank the blood which spurted out of the wounds they made. Krantz screamed and screamed in a way I didn't think a human could scream, for longer than I thought a human could scream without their vocal cords rupturing. They took their time, digging further and further into his body, devouring meat, organs, muscle, and when there were just bones, they snapped those to suck out the marrow. To his credit, or detriment, Krantz stayed alive for a long time. Not until they got to the big organs did he stop screaming. Then he made odd grunting sounds before even those stopped. When he stopped, the soldiers just kept going. There was just a pile of broken, cracked bones in the end. I even saw the soggy stub of the man's cigar in the pile. I think it was then I started to laugh. Ridiculous, hysterical laughter. Once they were done with Krantz, they turned their attention to the other soldiers Krantz brought along to try and control these guys. What a laugh. They took their time with these men, too. God, the screaming was unreal. The super soldiers seemed to enjoy what they were doing. They were no longer eating them, but were more than willing to slowly tear these people apart. It took hours for them all to die. Then there was just me, the new soldiers, and dozens of dead people. I have no idea how many were dead right there in the clearing. I don't know how many villagers were there. A lot. More than 50, maybe a few hundred. As I stood there, unable to move, hearing things inside my own brain I can never remove, The huts began to burn fast. They all came up to me then, standing there in formation, one in front with the most elaborate mask, huge horns and hideous teeth made out of God knew what. They were covered in blood, guts, and body parts. I waited for them to start on me. I knew they would take their time. I tried so hard to be brave, the good soldier. I failed. I think I cried, blubbering.
You see what you have helped create,
they said. Yes, they. They spoke as one. Maybe they weren't even speaking because I could sort of hear the words in my mind now.
You elevated us. You gave us power. You expanded our minds. You enhanced our strength. Then you left us awake for eternity to look into the void, look into the world to see it as it really is. You made us gods.
I tried to speak. I didn't want them to do this. I tried to stop them.
Yes, you did. Therefore you will live. You need to tell them. Tell anyone and everyone. We are out there now. We are the new gods. You will all see us. We will destroy the cancer of humanity. Slowly, it is inevitable. We do not sleep. We cannot be stopped. Will not stop.
Then they filled my head with images of them in battles across the world, destroying the world one battle at a time, person after person, filling the world with blood. Then they were gone. I couldn't move for another few hours. I watched the village burn. Then I could move and I just collapsed to the ground. I was still on the ground when you guys found me.
Do you see what I'm telling you? You have to listen. They're still out there, right now. Out there, coming for you, coming for me, all of us, right now. No one can stop them. You can't stop them. We wanted to create the ultimate soldiers, but we created gods. Creatures who want nothing more than to destroy all of us. We thought we'd just take away the need to sleep, but we got gods instead. We opened their minds up to things we don't want to see when we're awake. When we sleep, we see them, but we pass them off as nightmares. But what if the nightmares were real? What if they are what the world really is? What if keeping them awake just showed them everything is a dream? Thank you. That's enough, soldier. Guards, you can take him now. We don't know why we sleep. We know we have to, but not why. What if the only way we can process what the world really is by being asleep? Don't you see? You woke them up, and now there's nothing that can stop them. They're coming. For all of us. Jesus, don't you see what you assholes did? You have to find them, nuke them, do something. Subject has been removed. Evidence from the site indicates a massacre of all villagers, plus soldiers and Krantz. The test subjects are still missing. Polter will be neutralized. This recording is to be classified as top secret and stored safely in Washington, D.C. End of recording. There's a strange sound outside. Going to go check on what that is. All records saved for this recording will be destroyed. We seem to be under attack. Oh my God. Oh my God. No, no! You should have listened. We're coming.
How this tape ended up on the base in New Mexico is unclear. It is also unclear what happened to those at this base in Vietnam. It is also unclear about the validity of this experiment or what happened. It is recommended this tape be locked away to prevent any accidental dissemination to the public. All notes about this experiment were destroyed. If it can be done, and methods ascertained, new experiments using more advanced and developed versions of these drugs should commence as soon as possible. What was that sound behind you? Is it late at night? Is the darkness pressing against your window? You might want to stay where you are. Perhaps get under the covers, because they might be out there, unable to sleep, unable to dream, but looking for their vengeance. Something they just might find where you are when the night comes out. You've been listening to When the Night Comes Out, a weekly horror anthology podcast with stories by Bryan W. Alaspa and narrated by Allie James. For Bryan's work, visit his website at www.bryanwalaspa.com or visit amazon.com for his books of fiction and nonfiction. Be sure to listen to Allie's work on Facebook at Allie James Projects.